One of the most surprising things that's come out of my having a YouTube channel is the degree to which I have been able to experience independent designers, independent creators and artists' work, and through the channel that I have, present those works, many of them, to a larger audience. And that wasn't something I really thought about when I started the channel. I think I didn't know enough about the game design industry, and maybe the industry itself has changed a bit in the years since I've had the channel, where there are more and more independent creators, especially in the solo RPG space, but also in the board game space, that are producing really great pieces of art and contributions to the field of games. And in this video, I'm going to go through, this is kind of an independent designer roundup. I've done a video like this before, and I'll put a link to the description of that video down below. There's going to be a lot of links in the video down below to follow up on. In this video, I want to just present a bunch of independent designers' work that has been coming through the Geek Gamers office, and some of this material I've played, some of it I haven't. All of these are from designers I know and whose work I have played, including this wonderfully illustrated game board here, which is from the designer of Quest for the Lost Pixel, and a great board game that I feature on the channel many times. And we're going to start out by something that was sent to me by Perplexing Ruins, who is the author of Fallen, which is a wonderful RPG system that I have featured on the channel. And again, you're going to find links to everything that I'm mentioning below in the description, as well as some links in the video to follow up on other games I mention. This game is called Gnome, a game of gnomish wonder and peril. And if you have been following Geek Gamers at all, you know that one of my recurring characters is Fidget the Gnome, and I just love gnomes. Fidget the Gnome has appeared in a bunch of different game systems, that he's been reincarnated in different adventures, and finally a game about gnomes themselves. So this is a game that I believe can be played GM-less or with a GM. Let's see what we have here in the game structure. It can function in the typical role-playing game mode with a referee describing the worlds and situations and the players, or it can be equally friendly to the solo player. Sessions are structured in the episodic format, like that of a serialized television series or chapter book. You will be determining the week's adventure, playing out the episode that is going to be springing randomly from the die rolls in the tables, recording what happened, think about your adventure until the next episode, and it is called a string of one-shots, if you will. You'll travel on the randomly generated grid on the map, drawing in results of die rolls, venturing from one region to another. There are many gaps in the rules for specific cases. Play as you wish, making determinations and alterations regarding death, initiative, surprise, light sources, and resource management. You're going to be having 3d6 and a d20. And I will say, before we just get into looking at this a little more, that I think this is following the pattern of many kind of small zine-like games now, where it is essentially like a structure in a theme for creating a story. We have an action roll here. You are going to be rolling 2d6, adding a score from your relevant life path, which I guess is some type of stat you have, and then you need to equal or greater than the difficulty score here. And of course, it doesn't say this, but if you're playing solo, you could just randomize a difficulty score if you wanted something that would be as if the GM created it for you. You have gnome creation, and you could see here that it's pretty simplified in terms of what the stats are. You have hardiness, dust, you have an inventory score, 3 life paths, which are going to have a score: protector, trickster, magician, couple of rations, and you have an affectation as a gnome. And you can roll through your life paths and it will determine what you did in your life before this point. And this kind of follows the old school Traveler sci-fi RPG character creation, where you are taking your character through their life history to give them a background and a backstory that will impact their stats. There's a table of trinkets and oddities, companions, fancy bits, and we've got some affectations and names, so you could roll up the ponderous Mervyn, for example, or somebody who's sad, or a poet. There are tricks that require an action roll with the magician score that will essentially be like little spells maybe in the game, keeping to the gnomic game theme. You have hardiness, a critical condition, dust, which is the magic essence, inventory, initiative, attack. So very basic kind of RPG mechanics here that will form the structure of the action. Adventuring in the gnomic world has many perils and wonders. You have opportunities. It explains how to begin your first adventure, build a map, choose a region, roll on the why am I here, which is essentially probably creating like a quest. And you have day procedures. You're going to roll to determine an event, then you will resolve the event, and you will decide what to do after the event: rest, search, or travel. The day will end, and you will repeat the procedure. And then you have a bunch of tables in here that are going to be giving you adversaries and encounters, discoveries, and you could see that discoveries is like the nature and type. You have the descriptor and type, so there's going to be a natural built-in narrative aspect to this that you will need to flesh out on the fly, either using your imagination or other tables and things to describe actually what you're seeing and what is happening there. There's a threat level die that is going to ratchet up or ratchet down the threat. And when you reach your objective area, you've reached the end. That will determine the end of your quest. There's tables here for different sites and dangers with delve events and what happens when you search the site. And again, you can see that you may need to bring to this your own specificity about something like what a glowworm, for example, might do, if that offers you a benefit or not. And we have some tables here with settlements, the focus, the leader, to help you create regions and a world in which to travel. And there's optional a hex crawl here where you can choose to consume food as you travel. And it says, use any preferred rule set. It's your table. So again, this is not heavy in its rules, and it may even go so far as to require something outside of it. You have this regional almanac that is really great to provide a little bit of kind of theme, background. I wish it was numbered. I counted them up. I can't remember how many there were. I wish it was numbered so you could randomize it, but you could obviously easily do that yourself. It might be basically close to a D66 table, but you can roll that up randomly or somehow choose it randomly to give yourself a description for a region. So you might be in an icy, snowy region, and this would tell you what is happening there, what the adversaries are, and maybe what a hook is, or a kind of quest that's presented to you. You could be in the woods or the hollows or the iron hills. So there is a way of getting things from the game set that will help create your world. And then we end up with a bunch of tables here. We have some NPC tables, and we have items, regular and unique. You have a table to create items for yourself, and then some mythical items that are described for you. And then we end here with some oracle tools, a yes/no tool, something that could be an event focus, and then a series of tables to give you an event, a subject, an action, an object, or nature and a type, or a descriptor and a type. So if you're familiar with solo RPGs by now, you're familiar with these types of tables that will be giving you suggestions of things that you could flesh out. So you may have to defend evil, something to do with the form flesh, or you may encounter a thing that is a misty settlement. You can decide what that actually means within the mechanics of the game, or you may encounter a shrieking fungi or a triggered rock, and you would need to describe what that actually meant. So this is a type of game that, again, it provides enough thematic suggestion for you, but it does require on your end the comfort and the ability to build that out into a story. You may choose to do that through journaling. You may choose to do that through other supporting materials that offer random tables or suggestions to you, but the overall theme is gnomes, and there is wonder and peril here, and this is from Perplexing Ruins. I did a video a while ago on Cartograph, which is a solo role-playing game of map making and discovery by Brandon Lee. I really liked this game a lot. You were building out a map, and as such, you were having explorations and interacting with the map. And the designer sent me the Atlas edition of this game, which is, as you could see, bigger. And I have not compared the two, but maybe we'll just take a quick look. I don't know if we can tell the difference here just in the table of contents, what actually has been added. But there's more about resources here I can see right away, and more discussion of the map, the journal, the prompts, and the dice. And there's probably more tables. Let's see. We have different gameplay options are added. So a multiplayer mode, a non-authoring mode. We'll take a look at that. And tables here. Yes, there are more tables. It appears in here with different city names, town names, encampment names, region names, people table, wares table, hunting table, wounds table. So just more of a cartograph. And you can look at my original video to see my detailed thoughts on the game. Let's look at these gameplay options. What I like about doing these map games, there's a lot I like about map games, not the least of which is that if you follow my channel at all, you know how much and how important I feel environments are toward gaming, especially solo gaming. And I often talk about beginning a session by focusing on the environment. But when you have a game that is a game of creating an environment, it's extra because you could also take whatever artifact you have from your gaming session here and then bring it into a different rule set you have and play through it. Now, in Cartograph, you do have events and things and actions, so you are not just drawing a map, you're actually interacting with the map, but you could still take that and bring it somewhere else. So here is the multiplayer mode here, and it's explaining how you do that. And somebody is the scribe, somebody is the illustrator. The non-authoring mode says uses tags and skill tests to resolve situations with uncertain outcomes. So it says if you want to do away with the writing component, the journaling, you can follow these rules. So you just ignore the journaling and then you use the prompt questions to frame a scene. You draw your map and you track resources, but you will be basically using skill tests to determine the outcomes and what happens there. And then you don't need to do as much writing or journaling. And here it's giving you other options for removing certain aspects of the game to make it like a more peaceful mode. You don't even have to do resource management. And it's explaining that a lot of the systems are modular and you can just ignore them. And it is also giving you a little way to take this game maybe into a different theme outside of the fantasy theme, how to integrate with other RPGs here. And then we get the tables. And as I said, I think there are more tables and prompts here than in the original edition of it. So I'm looking forward to getting this to the table and sorry about that, playing this playing this with the Atlas edition, I have to find my the outcome of my game here and see how it develops it more richly. But Cartograph was a game I really did enjoy, and the Atlas edition offers more of it. So the next thing I want to talk about is Vampire Alone in the Darkness. This is published by Mind's Vision, and we'll take a look at the credits here. It was originally published in Brazil, and it is the publisher of the single volume Cthulhu game that I presented a little while ago, which I really liked. And I think in the Cthulhu and certainly Vampire, and here are all the credits, you can pause the video to look at them. Obviously, vampires are very conducive to something that will be a solo kind of scenario play, have almost like a built-in ending point. The way the game uses this is you're up for 12 hours at night, then you need to find a rest place, you go back to your haven, and then you start all over again. So there's kind of the gameplay loop, I guess is what I'm looking for, is built into the theme, the story of the type of character. And very much like the Cthulhu book, this book operates with a very detailed character creation and going through all the different types of things your character is able to do. And then the bulk of the rest of the book is giving you places to visit and tables to roll on with events that happen. And I'm not going to show all of them, or any of them really. And you play through those events and you interact with those events and that world as yourself, and you do all the things that you are able to do or wish to do. And there are quite a lot of them because you have many skills. You have athletics, investigation, language, manipulation is a big one. Of course, combat skills and survival. And the lore and the mythology of the existing vampire stories is brought into play here in terms of you have an emotional component to the character and what a favorite prey, and so there's that type of flavor to the world that you or the character that you're creating. You also have gifts, and the gifts involve the mind, the soul, your desires, your powers, what type of beasts you might be dominating, and what type of shape you could be turning into. And if you have a mental torment is another one that, again, all of this plays very nicely into the tropes of vampirism that we all know. And then the key thing here that I want to talk about in a little bit more detail is the oracles that are provided for the solo play, because there's something interesting about them, or one of them, at least in particular, I should say unique about one of them. So we've got a basic oracle for interacting with the scenario, and you're just rolling the D10 and then choosing if you're asking it a question, you're going to get your yes, no. It's obviously the binary. If you're doing it for travel, there's like a directional one, and for interacting in some way with an object or whatever, you could figure out whether it's working or not working or closed or open. But there are events and things and characters that you interact with in the game, and there is an oracle for that. And so these can be kind of presented, as it says, as small quests. So you have a little plot on a tile, and then you're kind of rolling on these tables here. So determining what your threat is, what it wants to do, and something that is going to be used with it, and some outcome or impact of it. And it has like a little mini kind of procedure here where you're going to travel to 4 different areas, and if you don't find that threat, it will be in the 5th area. And you can keep rolling on the tables as you go to get prompts and see like where you are, and then work that into your story and
what that means and how close you're getting to the to satisfying what the quest is. And so through these prompts, you're able to develop little micro parts of your story that then interact with the kind of larger, I would say, larger prompts or events that are described in the various areas of the town. So this is an example of, and then of course you do have tables for like who your combat is, what types of challenges you have. There are for other characters that you will encounter in the world. And then there are also rules for playing cooperatively or playing with, they call it a mediator. So there's those different modes of play. Now, it falls into the category of it's almost like a living storybook. So it's a single volume with a theme. As I said, if you've played their Cthulhu game, it's similar mechanically to that. And many of the types of solo RPG books that I see now are these differently themed single volumes. So all you need is within here, the description is you're brought back to life as a vampire, empowered yet ensnared by a sinister shadow demon hungry for mortal blood. As you grapple with the unimaginable powers and brutal instincts, will you be able to keep a peaceful existence or surrender to the darkness within? So the concept of that type of struggle to survive and then to kind of fight against what you have become is very apparent in this game book. And I would say that the vampire theme is extremely well suited towards solo play. Thousand Year Vampire is the game that comes to mind as another one in the genre. I'm not really sure. There's probably others that I don't know about. That's the only one that I played, I think, aside from this one. But thematically, it is very well suited to solo play. There is a mature content warning on it for violence and horror, and The Vampire Alone in the Darkness is out from Mind's Vision. So a little bit similar to The Vampire is Under Ashen Skies. This is a game book by Alan Barr and Alex T. Similar in the sense of it's a single volume contained where you are in a situation, you're traveling to various locations in this world that you're in, and it's called a horror single player RPG with a focus on combat, survival, and exploration, inspired by Hellraiser, Silent Hill, the Orphic Mysteries. And you are kind of awakened in your apartment, which is in a broken down town. You don't have a lot of resources. You're not really sure what's going on. It felt, as I played it, almost like apocalyptic to me. You are searching around for items to understand where you are. This is actually a very good indication of like visually what it feels like. You basically go to sites, you determine what is going on in the site, how dangerous the site is. Do you have any encounters in the site? And you have to keep track of how much time is passing. The world is going to be consumed, and you are definitely under stress and trying to be efficient in exploring around, but there are many different dark things you need to deal with. So to play the game, you're going to be printing out, ideally, these sheets. This is, for example, an apartment block that was indicated as I began to explore it. There's a high school, there's a whole bunch of different places to go. And then as time runs out and the devouring begins, you have a different map of the place that is starting to be overcome by the darkness. There's a university hospital. So these types of very traditional kind of horror settings, like a hospital or an empty high school. There's a governor's palace, that another apartment block. are part of where you will be going, and then you'll be filling out your exploration track as you go, and as you explore through an area, you gain certain benefits. You're keeping track also of what's happening with the nemesis in the game, and needing, as time passes, to maintain the clock here of keeping your batteries going, reloading weapons, lighting a torch, and keeping track of this. And then at a certain point, the devouring is going to begin in the game, and that will sort of reset things and change what's going on. So I'm sort of in the middle of playing this. It's a survival game. It's a horror survival game, and also very well suited to like feeling alone in the world and having things like jump up at you. And as is to be expected from Alex T's games, there's just a ton of random tables, thematic descriptions, and I hate the phrase like dripping with theme, but it is the kind of game where if you're really into playing it and someone walks in the room, like you might get startled. That had been my experience of playing this game. So that's Under Ashen Skies. Also from Alex, I did a video on Keralis, the dungeon crawler that he has put out, and he sent me volume 2 of the kind of the official Keralis zine that comes with it, the Valorian Codex. When I did my original video, I had a digital version of volume 1. I showed it at the end of that video. I'll just show you in here what we've got. There's some new optional rules for the game, including making a lockpick. Well, that's cool. Critical hits and fumbles, finding containers, resistance versus vulnerability. There's some creature combat tables, some named creatures. So you can, looks like they're things that will modify creatures in that game. The Overlords, as I recall, had modifications to all their minions, but here are tables for just a creature modifier. So this, for example, the detonating creature, or a skilled creature, vigilant. So you're adding some stats to a creature, or a creature that might steal from you. So that will add a little flavor to it. And then we have, let's see, we've got persistent domains. Let's see what that is. Persistent domains, after a few gaming sessions, you're going to end up with several domain maps. So it's explaining how you can reset the tension die back to its highest value, remove the growing darkness events, basically having the same combat encounters that you had before. The Overseer and its influence remains the same, but you can return to the spot where your character died, get something back from their inventory. So basically kind of going back to where you had been and explaining how to do that if you have died. And we get a table for a random creature name. So like the Void Gazer or the Silent Whisperer. That's creepy. Little theme there. And then we are getting here, I think, we're getting an entire new setting here that can be played. I won't really show you what's in here, but this actually looks pretty cool to go through and play a pre-seeded, we'll call it, and pre-described setting, and has different types of endings for that. And then we've got the creatures, I guess, that are in that setting. The other thing that I have received from Alex, but I don't have it here in the video, are cards that he's produced a series of cards, poker-sized cards, that basically describe and reproduce the tables in this book. Well, all the content really in this book, the tables, the enemies that you have here, the room layouts. So you could, instead of playing with this book, go through and play with just stacks of cards and pull the encounter, pull the loot card, rather than rolling on these tables. And I have set up a game to do that I love cards in my games. It does create a big table presence. So unlike just playing out of a book, you are playing with stacks of cards. But it's I do kind of like that. It makes it feel a little bit more like a board game that you're drawing out. So the cards are also available, and as I said, they have like the spoils and loot cards with the different types, and then the subtables, and you just pull in a stack rather than rolling on the table. So Keralis lives on with the addition of at least the first and second zine published. I don't know if there will be more. If you watch the channel, you know I've talked about this game and combining the mechanics of it and the place of it with some of the tables in 2d6 Dungeon or for descriptors and other things. I've tried to kind of integrate them because I love the bones of this and basically everything about this. But 2d6 Dungeon does have some tables and things that are so rich. I don't want to abandon them just because I don't love the mechanics of that game. So because I felt that game on its own wasn't offering me enough mechanical interest, I have imported some of the, as I said, some of the tables and flavor into Keralis as I go. And I've died a couple times in this game, but this remains active on my table, and I am looking forward to incorporating some of the things from this second codex within my gameplay.
So I've decided I do want to show you these cards from Keralis. They got a little bit messed up here. It's interesting to see how the pen and paper dungeon crawl can evolve into something that has more like, in this case, cards for like a card game or have board game elements, because that's going to be a natural segue into, you can kind of see this little word peeping out here. The next thing I'm going to talk about, which is essentially a board game that is morphing more into an RPG. So the other way around. In any case, there are a lot of cards available now, and we're not going to look at them all, but you could see they will duplicate the tables in the book, and then they will give you the information on them. The room description in this particular game doesn't have an immediate gameplay effect. It's really just kind of flavor text, as it were, but you can, obviously opt to have it be something more. And then there are also event cards here. This is something not from the game. It's a little bit disorganized here. I mentioned the spoils table, so there's different types of spoils, and then there's different types of cards with the values on the back. And as mentioned, just basically a ton of cards that are representative of the tables in the book. And so if you are playing with these cards, as I mentioned, and here's the mundane spoils and the description, you will end up with just piles and piles of decks of cards to pull from as you go through the various procedures for the game. So it really does changes the footprint for sure. It changes a little bit the feel of the game. You end up with cards, a bunch of cards for your character, and that may be to your liking or not. Here are, for example, the traps. I have enjoyed playing this way, just kind of setting it all up and pulling in the cards. It does make it very flexible, I think, and possible maybe even to use some of these decks with other systems if you wanted to. This is an example of the Growing Darkness card. So this is just to show you some of the cards that are available. And if you were using them, obviously you would have this card would be like the ongoing effect. So it would create and be with the character there that it impacted. I think this is one of the Overlord impacts, some more weapon cards, and I think you get the point. So that's a brief look at the cards, some of the cards that are available for this game. And as I say, it's interesting to me because this is like a pen and paper game that is really going into cards and other types of
a different way of experiencing, I guess, the mechanics, because I think when you're playing just pen and paper out of a book, it kind of feels one way. And when you add in cards and things, it feels another way. Moving to the other thing that I was going to talk about is the League of Dungeoneers, which I just received this false prophet. The designer reached out to me to ask if I wanted a copy of the new rules, and I said sure, not realizing that it was going to come with, well, first of all, the new rules are massive. I'll show those in a second. I didn't realize it was going to come with a whole box and a new expansion. So there's a ton of stuff here. As with everything in this game, there's excess, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but there's just a lot and it can be overwhelming. These are the cards from the main game, which I have the box for which is over there, but I've divided it up so I have like the tiles and the standees in that box, and then I've got the cards here from the main game, and then these are the expansion cards, as well as I haven't gotten to, there's sleeving, which haven't actually sleeved most of the things, just sort of what I'm using. There's new event cards, and there's just a ton of new stuff. So League of Dungeoneers is a game that I have done a number of videos on. I first encountered the game when it was in its sort of P&P version, really way before the Kickstarter even, and did a video on it there. One of the things I'm excited about is in the expansion there are knights and squires, and the squires go with the knights as kind of like an example of like one of the mercenaries that you can hire. And I'm going to create a new party, because when I originally played this game for the last video I did make a party of 4, and I found it a lot to manage. I didn't follow the mercenary rules where you can just basically pick up a pre-made character and add them to your party. So I think what my plan is, I want to make a knight and I want to have a squire, and then I think I want to make kind of my own version of. In the expansion, there's a druid class. I don't have the, I'll show the book in a minute, but there's a druid class, and I want to kind of take a druid and make it into like a druid sort of witch, which isn't exactly following the rules, but that is a theme of this game for me, because even though, I mean, I guess you would describe it as a board game, for me, the more content I get, the more it is just becoming, it's like a sandbox RPG type of situation with the overland travel, the rules for interacting with the world, and the expansion of character classes and ancestries that you have, and all the different ways you can modify that. It's like an RPG with heavy board game elements at this point, as opposed to just like a dungeon crawler. I think one of my videos on it was like, not your mama's dungeon crawl. It really has always been more than just a dungeon crawl, but it's even more of that. So let's take a quick look at just the expanded rules and the rules for what comes new with this expansion. So here's the new rule book, and it's printed on glossy paper. There are definitely some rules changes. I haven't gone through and compared everything rule by rule, but one of the main things is there are some new flowcharts for the mechanics for various things like combat and activations and such that are in this book, which of course I can't easily find now. I noticed there were some adjustment of certain stats on some of the characters, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other changes, both minor and major. There were some updated cards that I went through, and so here's an example of this enemy attack. Looks complicated, but anyway, this is the revised flowchart for that. I'm sure, as I said, there were some typos. A lot of effort was put into changing some things that were even very minor typos, like with just like an extra letter or something, or missing or present in one of the cards. And I did go through and substitute all of those out. So that comes, I guess, with the upgrade pack. And than this rule book. And so I guess I'll just go and, use this for the creation of my new characters. The expansion rule book does give you the aforementioned druid folk, the druid and the knights, and rules for leveling them up. It also gives you a couple of species. You could play a half ogre or a duck folk. And then it also gives you some specialization rules that will allow you, as you advance, I think it's to level 5 or something, to go and specialize in ways that weren't there. And for example, with the alchemist, you can specialize and be a witch. Now, this is where I think I'm going to tinker with it a little bit and pick up something, because I kind of just want to play a witch. I want to play like a low-level witch with my knight and my squire. I think I'm going to make it be like a halfling knight. I want a lot of contradictions in my people, and just kind of create some fun and contradictory characters to adventure with here, and maybe just have 2 main characters and 2 like mercenary types, or just the cards. I'm not sure. I haven't really figured that part out yet, but part of, for me, what gets overwhelming in a good way, but sometimes in a bad way about this game is there's just so much. It's like I want to, on the one hand, do all the options. On the other hand, realistically, when I play the game, I often pare it down a lot. But it is, I think that's what makes it so rich. There's just so much content to get through, even if you just don't pare it down, but especially the way that I do, really trying to focus on pulling in a card as I travel for a hex, just giving myself, leaning into all the material that's already been created, as well as then thinking, well, what would a character do in this situation? And in that way, kind of playing out like almost like one shots, as if it were an actual tabletop role-playing game, as opposed to this sort of hybrid build as you go. I can't call it a board game, but there is a map. So it's hard to categorize this one, really. And I think that is part of the theme of what's so great about independent design in this space. It's like you can do something that doesn't really have a category. It's just what it is, what you have done. And certainly League of Dungeoneers succeeds at that. And it's been a game that I have enjoyed for a long time and have been a supporter of. And I'm pleased to see that there's more and more content. And as I said, I'm going to take some of the things that are created for the Druid class, kind of tweak them to make them into something of like a witch that I can play, and draw that from the expansion for my next set of adventures with this rule set. And then speaking of dungeon crawls, I want to just touch on Caves and Catacombs. This is rules for a dungeon crawling game playable with paper and pencil and 6-sided dice. This was sent to me by the designer. This is the only game in this video that I actually haven't played, or a designer that I don't know. I think the look of it obviously is awesome and harkening back to something that we all know, and it's a big ask. I'm showing you Greyhawk because this is the only original D&D material that I actually have, but just trying to make the point that when you design something like this, as many other people have done, you are setting an expectation for a player that's pretty high level. In any case, back to this, I played this a teeny bit, and it is a pretty simple, not in a bad way, pen and paper dungeon crawl. As mentioned, you will be rolling on some tables and creating a quest and going adventuring in your dungeon that you roll up and create as you're going through. And you could see here how you're creating that dungeon. There's not a lot of flavor text there, and most of the there's a lot of D6 tables, or in this case a D66 table for the special contents. I had some issues with the balance. I started playing it and died right away because I encountered, I don't know, 4 or something skeletons and very quickly just died. So I'm not sure. I have to play it further to understand whether that was just bad die rolling, or it is imbalanced in some way. There's also an expansion for it that has some wilderness rules that I'm really interested in, because I'm always interested in wilderness gaming, and it's appealing. Obviously, the package is appealing, and I do like the idea that there's something easy that you could just take with you with a couple of D6s and not and just engage with in a manner almost like playing an old like Dungeon Quest board game or something like that. But as I said, I did die pretty quickly, so I need to redo it and see if that was bad luck or just the way the game goes. And I think it seems like, and for me, like the dungeon crawling space is almost endless. Like if there's a new dungeon crawler and it's pen and paper, I'm going to be interested in trying it. There's just something about that theme and mechanics and setting that is forever interesting. And in fact, I've written about that in an essay on why dungeons are so popular. So certainly that is true for me as a gamer. And this designer also sent me a copy of his game Little Town, which it has another expansion too, that's Eldritch Town. This is based on the TV show, or it's an attempt to play homage to the TV show Twin Peaks. And I was a huge fan of that show and watched probably most of it, if not all of it. And then it goes on to explain what it draws inspiration from. I haven't played this yet. It is like some of the other things that we looked at earlier in the video, a game book where you are, essentially traveling through to different areas, having encounters, keeping track of certain stats and things that may go up and down, dealing with events. I believe it pulls in the randomness through a deck of poker cards and gives you this kind of eerie investigator feel. So I'm very much looking forward to playing this through because Twin Peaks was just awesome as far as I'm concerned, and anything that attempts to recreate it is a good deal by my estimation. And then finally, we're going to end with a look at the latest card deck from the game Dungeon Crawler. This is a game I have also treated on the channel a bunch and had probably my most emotional videos about it because I found the game just to be so engaging and also so frustrating that I bought all the stuff for it, sold all the stuff for it. I think I even gave it away. I don't even think I sold it. Then bought a lot of it back and did a video a little while ago. The author sent me the basic set, but then I bought all the other expansions. And what I want to show you here is the most recent release, I think, of cards for this game that the author just sent. So the most recent 82 card expansion pack, E4 Underworld, the designer sent to me. This is copyright 2024. He's still putting out material from this. It is an expansion. It's a non-random expansion. Deep below the surface is the underworld, ruled mostly by the Minotaur. Surrounded by darkness, unlike the dwarves, they embrace the powers of evil. It tells you what it contains. Basically, you're getting your 40 crawler cards, your 40 dungeon cards, and you are getting one adventure and one new quest. And of course, these can be integrated with any of the existing material. And if you want to understand how the game plays, you can refer to the number of videos that I've done on the game. But right now we're just going to look through a little bit of some of these cards and see what we have. Now, one of the things that's happened as this game has continued on is that the original card decks, and I don't know when it switched over, the original card decks had original art by various artists, and that resulted in some inconsistencies among the art. You could tell there were multiple artists. At a certain point, it all went to, I don't know if this is AI art. There's a credit here, but I'm not sure if that's an actual person or what, but it seems that all of the art now, well, that's obviously the same image, is credited to that same name. In any event, so we have here an arcane fire ant, a large flesh golem, looks kind of like Frankenstein to me, And there are repeats, obviously, in these decks. This Infernal Shadow Elf, all of the, and here's the Minotaur Warlock that's pictured on the cover. All of these cards should be unique to this expansion, but there would be repeats within the expansion itself. I kind of prefer to look, honestly, at the crawler cards that we get rather than, I like to keep the dungeon card's a bit of a surprise, so let's look at some of these crawler cards here. We have locked combat, so we can assign to a target character in play combat against this character, gains +2 power. Remove this card if the target character leaves play. Rampant Fury gains area 2 or a melee attack, or the target character gains area 2 on a melee attack. Oh, on a melee attack, I see. So it's the target adventurer or the target character. And then we've got an Adrenaline Rush. We gain +3, I can't remember, tactics, I think that is, skill resource until the end of this turn. That's kind of a lot. Although, again, in this game, sometimes the management of that isn't as pressing as I think it could or should be. So I'm not really sure that is so much of a benefit. We have someone, I work better alone, and the target adventurer can target a different target during combat. Lots of targeting there. And here we have can do that and gain stealth if you have one of these key things. So we're basically getting some new, we're getting some new cards. That's what this game is all about. And we have a magic evil here. Evil adventurers and evil characters gain stealth. I like that one. So this is just, it's more from Dungeon Crawler, and I've talked at length about my feelings about this game. Oh, here we get a lightning bolt. We get a ranged +2, and then here we get to select, from each distance that the target has. I like that one. If we have one of these two, that flexibility would be useful, actually. So we get, we're getting more stuff. And this is a game that, like I said, I've talked about it, and we'll just look at a few of the other cards as I chat here. I've talked about it at length. At its best, what it does is kind of gives you the opportunity to play a kind of Magic the Gathering-like structure of playing a card deck against a card deck, but by yourself. And at its best, it also gives you something like a Mage Knight type of card manipulation and card-based combat. At its worst, it is very frustrating, and at its core, it lacks a leveling up mechanic that I have talked about as being a problem for years, and tried to kind of house rule myself to fix in various ways with greater or lesser success. Here's one of the original pieces of art from the original decks that I think is kind of cute and just different. That seems, like I said, to be lost in the later decks, maybe due to costs of making it, as an independent designer. So I am happy that I bought this game again. I think that I got rid of it in frustration and did regret that at a certain point, because when it is clicking, it offers something that, as I said, those other, it like Magic the Gathering, but you could play it on your own, and like a little bit like Mage Knight, but you can play it just with cards. And so that's the best way I have to describe sort of what the best parts of the game are. And you can also choose to spend time building your opposition deck. You can make it be thematic in terms of the enemies. You can spend a lot of time creating your own attack deck and have that be thematic as well. And so for all of those reasons, it offers something that has a place, I guess, in my gameplay. I do think that even with the new rulebook, as I said, it suffers from some confusion, a little bit of kind of race for the galaxy. That's like iconography, a lot of iconography. This has a lot of keywords that I think are hard to remember and need to be constantly explained. But overall, I have landed back on the side of this definitely is in my play rotation. I enjoy that there's the designer has stuck with it all these years and continuing to put out new content, even if none of the basic issues have been resolved. I would really love to see the designer himself, who knows the game best, obviously, create a leveling up rules for the game. Because I think for a dungeon crawler, that is sorely missing and would address a number of different issues. So I'm asking once again, I hope that happens. And if it does happen, I would love for somebody to tell me about that so I knew what the rules were. So that is a look inside a whole bunch of independently designed games and RPGs that I have in the Geek Gamers office, that I have played, that I will play, designers I have appreciated over the years. And I hope that in watching this, those of you who have stuck through the whole thing, maybe I've exposed you to something you didn't know about, and you'll go out and support independent game designers in this wonderful, rich design space.